Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today I'm looking at some Dynasty buys. As always, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Let's go. So the first player, very timely, Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, I might have chosen him for today's video anyway. Probably not, actually. But now he's definitely my choice. So obviously he's in the news with the appendicitis issue. We don't know how much time Marvin Harrison Jr. will miss. It'll be some time. Obviously, this is not an injury that's going to affect him in 2026. This is not a dynasty relevant injury. I'm not concerned for Marvin Harrison Jr.'s dynasty value. So let's take a look at what he's done so far. In 9 games, 34 catches, 525 yards, 4 touchdowns, 62 targets, 3.8 catches, and 58.3 yards per game. So he's been a little better than last year, but it's kind of the same problem. It's who is to blame for the poor catch rate? Whose fault is that? Is it Marvin Harrison Jr.? Is it Kyler Murray? Or is it the offensive staff not using him correctly? I think it's mostly kind of a mix of the three. But I did see something recently that encouraged me. So Harrison Jr. is averaging 12.5 PPR points a game, 31st among wide receivers. Now, that's okay. Now, why is he a dynasty buy? First of all, people are competing. They need competing players. Marvin Harrison Jr., I got to tell you, he's going to miss week 11. We know that. Appendix recovery, almost certainly going to miss week 12. Then he's going to come back. And is he going to come back week 13? I don't know. Is he going to be effective? I don't know. But there were very positive signs recently with Marvin Harrison Jr. I think at the end of the day, the Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr. pairing with that coaching staff was not working. But they had a week 8 bye. And immediately, offensive coordinator Drew Petzing, who I've criticized, I don't think he's very good, but he immediately said something interesting. During the bye, we would like to get the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr., a very important player for us. And they did. They did do that in both games, 10 and 12 targets. And he had 10 catches, 129 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Decent production. Now, again, that's 10 catches out of 24 targets. That's still bad. Whose fault is that? Again, I do think there is a component of Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't quite going to be what we wanted. But that doesn't mean that Marvin Harrison Jr. is bad. That just means that maybe he's not a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. That doesn't mean he can't be a top 10 or top 15 dynasty wide receiver. And I do think we're seeing a commitment to using him. They showed that commitment. And with Jacoby Brissett, they were suddenly able to do it. The volume was there. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr. to me is undervalued. And now, obviously, I wasn't able to pull trades from post-appendix news. That would only be the last, 2 hours. So the price might be lower than what I'm quoting. I did see Bucky Irving and Kayshon Boutte. Bucky Irving is practicing today. That's nice, but I'd still much rather have Marvin Harrison Jr. in Dynasty. And then this one wasn't even in there. I just put this one on myself. A mid-late 26 first. I think you might be able to do that. I do think Marvin Harrison Jr. is coming back. I don't think he's out the rest of the year. I do think he'll come back. This had so many injuries. I think when he comes back, he'll maybe not be a wide receiver 1, but he'll be playable. He'll be usable. He'll be someone you could put in your lineup. So he's not worthless for the rest of the year. And I would consider paying this price for Marvin Harrison Jr., who I do want in Dynasty. I do believe in. And I think this will be a very low price to get him at. Now, next player, Quentin Johnston. And Quentin Johnston there's a thing in Dynasty, and in this fantasy too, but Dynasty mostly, where a player is punished more for playing through an injury and playing poorly than they would be if they had just missed all of those games entirely. The best thing is to be ruled out immediately and out of sight, out of mind. The next best, or worse than that, is to constantly be talking about them coming back, like Ricky Pearsall or Brock Purdy. And then the absolute worst is to play through an injury and disappoint people, because then people will say that they're bad. And that is a mistake that people make in Dynasty. Johnston overall this year has been pretty good. 37 catches, 502 yards, 6 touchdowns, 62 targets, 4.1 catches, and 55.8 yards a game. Looks very similar, actually, to the last player we talked about, Marvin Harrison Jr. Very sadly, very similar stat line, except for the added touchdowns. So for those reasons, he's averaging 13.5 PPR points a game, 20th among wide receivers. Now, Quentin Johnston is an example of, he was decent in year 2. He took a huge step forward from year 1 to year 2. And most people said, myself included, I got this wrong. Well, it didn't matter. He's bad. He's bad. He's bad. And maybe that was a mistake. Maybe we should have looked more at what he did in year 2. He's a 24-year-old wide receiver with first-round draft capital. In year 2, he did produce. He was not awful. In year 1, he was awful. But in year 2, he was decent. And he took a further step forward. And we saw it for 4 games, 5.5 catches, 84.3 yards, 9 targets a game. Now, am I saying that that is what to expect? No, I don't think so. I think the truth is somewhere between this and this, somewhere between these two things. But he had a hamstring injury in week 5. He was limited in that game. And then it all fell apart. He was limited in week 5. He was okay. Then he missed week 6. And then in week 7 through 9, he looked terrible. I mean, he really looked terrible. In week 7, he just didn't look right. In week 8 and 9, the role was reduced. In week 8, there was that goose egg where he just looked awful. I mean, he really looked awful. He probably shouldn't have been playing in those games. He was not 100%. And he was injured. If he had just sat out those games, people would still be valuing him the same as before. But then in week 10, yes, Ladd McConkey outproduced him, but Johnston had 10 targets. He was back to his regular role, back to his regular target share. He was a focal point of the offense. He was, and he will continue to be. Now, is Ladd McConkey a better wide receiver than Quentin Johnston? Yes, he is. Ladd McConkey is better, but this is a Justin Herbert-led offense. If Quentin Johnston is just the 1B here, that is a valuable player. And he has shown in years 2 and 3 that he is not bad, that he is a good player. He's someone that we should value. So for those reasons, I think that his price has gone down too far. I did see a deal for Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet is irrelevant. I mean, he's fine. He's there. He plays running back. He'll have some value. But in terms of dynasty value, Quentin Johnston has way more value than Zach Charbonnet. And this next one, Quentin Johnston, is second for DK Metcalf. I got to be honest with you, I'd rather have Quentin Johnston than DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is a 4 years older version of Quentin Johnston. I don't want DK Metcalf at all. So this one's a no-brainer. And I just think that Quentin Johnston is someone, again, the value is there. This is an opportunity. This is a player I want. I mean, he's 24. He's going to be 25 right at the start of next season. This is not someone whose career is over. He's on the Chargers. There's a lot of opportunity here. And I'd be looking to capitalize on his recent slump at a low price. Now, if you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. I'm offering a 50% discount off your first month at all tiers using code TylerYT50. You can get all my rankings, including weekly start sit, my dynasty rankings, access to Discord, all my write-ups, Patreon-only videos, direct message fantasy advice, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos, which you'll see at the end of every video, including this one. Tiers begin at just $6 a month, $3 with the discount. If you want to know more about the Patreon, check out my Why You Should Join the Patreon videos on the channel. They're on the homepage under Patreon promos. Now, I have talked about the Patreon a lot. I will say I have been doing so much in there in the Patreon Discord. I've really been covering all of the news, all of people's fantasy teams. I think it's been my best year ever of Patreon content, especially the write-ups, the game write-ups for every game. And, you know, I've definitely felt a lot more balance, not focusing so much on Twitter and especially not focusing on, you know, too much with the YouTube comments. Again, you know, the Patreon is where my best content is. The YouTube, I've definitely, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've cut back a little bit on the show prep and try to just let my knowledge and personality and just what I bring to the table shine a little bit more. And there is more, like, to all of these takes. There's always more. There is more. I talk about more on the Patreon all the time. So, I've tried to kind of make the YouTube content a little bit more welcoming, a little bit more basic, a little bit more easy to understand, less diving deep into statistical things, and more about my opinions, my take, my thought process, and just kind of what's on my mind. And then save the deeper analysis, the game by game analysis for the Patreon. So that's been my approach lately. I think it's worked for everybody, patrons, YouTube viewers, everyone I think has been happy. So if you want the extra info, that is available on the Patreon for these takes, all other takes, and everything else. Patreon.com/fantasy advice. Use code TylerYT50 for 50% off your first month. With that said, I'll move into my next player. Now, my next Dynasty buy is Mac Jones, and I've talked about him actually as a Dynasty stash on here before, but I think he's graduated to a buy. Now, I still believe that people are talking about Mac Jones as a temporary asset. So we're going to go through Mac Jones' statistics first. 8 games, 69.6% completion. That's really good. 13 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Okay. 7.4 yards per attempt. That's strong. 268.9 passing yards a game. That's strong. So he's doing volume, accurate, efficient. All 3 things that we want to see. Compare this to, say, like Bryce Young. Bryce Young is a joke, right? Mac Jones is actually playing well. So could that be a place Mac Jones goes? I don't know. Something to consider. Now, he has at a low touchdown rate. 13 passing touchdowns in 8 games is nothing special. So for those reasons, and because he's not a big runner, 16.3 fantasy points a game, 18th among quarterbacks. So Mac Jones is not someone in a 1 QB dynasty league I'd care about. This is for Superflex only. But in Superflex, this is a valuable player. This is a valuable QB2 in Superflex. Now, a lot of people are misinformed about Mac Jones. They don't know what's going on with Mac Jones. They talk about, oh, he's going to be a starter next year, or, oh, he's going to unseat Brock Purdy as the starter. These things are, we have to have context for these things. Mac Jones is under contract with the 49ers. They signed him to a 2-year deal. That was very smart of them. For a total of $4.66 million next year. Now, that is a really low number. That is a very attractive contract for the 1 year. I think there are teams, certainly, that would give a 3rd-round pick, if not, maybe not a clean second, but more than a single 3rd-round pick to acquire Mac Jones at that contract level. That's just such a low contract that it's such a strong value. You could build a really good roster for that 1 year. Now, there are people saying that Mac Jones could unseat Brock Purdy. Those people have no idea what they're talking about. Brock Purdy has like $180 million in guarantees, has a no trade clause, and they can't get out of Brock Purdy's contract anytime soon. So those people are just uneducated and uninformed. But your average dynasty analyst is uneducated and uninformed. So it wouldn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at all that they say crazy things. So there is no moving on from Brock Purdy to go to Mac Jones. Now, is Brock Purdy ever going to be healthy this year? I don't know. Is Brock Purdy going to return to the starting job this year if he's not 100%? That's a great question. But there's no moving on from Brock Purdy in 2026 to make Mac Jones the starter. That's not possible. So maybe Brock Purdy could have also been a buy for those reasons, because people keep saying that. Now, in terms of buying Mac Jones, I basically saw one trade over and over and over again. Versions of Mac Jones for 26 or 27 third. And I got to be honest with you, I think the odds of getting something valuable in Superflex are higher from Mac Jones than they are from any third. Would I pay a second for Mac Jones? I don't think you have to, because I saw a zillion versions of buying him for a third. So he's a strong buy target. If you're competing, I got to be honest with you, I don't know how many more weeks of Mac Jones you're going to get, but whatever you get could be worth something. But I think you're going to gain even more value with Mac Jones moving into next year. In terms of other ways to buy him, there are other ways, but I focus more on this because this kind of is the simplest one to talk about on the channel. And again, he's a strong buy target for me right now. So I'll do the Patreon questions and then I'll wrap up the show. There's a bunch of questions like this. So I was talking to my buddy the other day about preparing for the offseason, specifically the types of players you want to stash over the offseason. Okay. So we want to focus on players who could gain value, right? What could happen to gain value? They could earn a bigger role. Players in front of them could be cut or traded, or they develop or something along those lines, right? So types of players, I mean, I'm open to all types of players. I don't think of this in terms of a player type. I will say the one type of player I don't stash is like old, boring wide receivers. Like I'm not going to stash Sterling Shepard during the offseason. He has had some relevant games this year. Tyler Lockett. I'm not going to stash Tyler Lockett during the offseason. So it's more that there's a type of player I'm not interested in, but there's a lot of types of players I am interested in, but it's easier actually to strike out those types of players. And this question is kind of in the same vein. At what point do you consider stashing players who are buried on the depth chart, but the guys ahead of them will be free agent in the offseason? Okay. So recently I changed the stash videos from 2025 stashes to 2026. So I started changing my focus on that, right? We're talking about who I'm going to stash for next year. So I would say, yeah, around the last couple of weeks to now, I'm starting to look at, in terms of stashes, not someone, I mean, I'm still looking at breaking out the rest of the year, but that's hard to find. I'm looking at who could break out in the future. Who could break out in the future? Who could gain more value in the future? And yeah, it's usually players who have someone in front of them who could go away. But then it doesn't, guarantee that they're going to have that role themselves, right? They have to earn it. Like Gunnar Helm is a good example. Gunnar Helm, I don't think they're going to keep Chigakonkwo. But does that mean that Gunnar Helm is going to be the starter, or are they bring in someone else? We'll see. So yeah, the point has happened already. I made the switch to 2026 stashes in my video. So we're already past that point where that's a strong consideration for me. In like September, I'm not thinking about 2026 as much. Okay. How do you see Bam Knight versus DeMercado? And how confident are you in Trey Benson's ability outlook when he's back? Okay. This is a little bit similar to Woody Marks in that I don't care about Bam Knight versus DeMercado. They both suck. At this point, I can't trust either of them. Unless Bam Knight is out. Then I would consider trusting DeMercado a little. But it doesn't matter. I am 100% sure that Trey Benson is better than both Bam Knight and DeMercado. I have no doubt about that. That's not the question. The question is not whether Trey Benson is better than Bam Knight or DeMercado. The question is Trey Benson really good, or is Trey Benson just better than nobody's? I am not sure. I've seen almost nothing from Trey Benson. I don't know if he's better. So it's going to come down to what he does. Does he do enough to earn next year's starting job? That's a possibility. Does he do enough that he showed that he's a part of the team, but they could be looking for a 1 or a 1A to replace him? Or is he just awful and he's more of a backup? I don't think there's any universe where Trey Benson is just done after this year. I still think he'll be a backup, but at worst, but it's a question of what do we see? So my answer to that is he's better than those guys, but other than that, the range of outcome is large. As a Giants fan, are you excited to watch our crazy King Jameis light it up? Well, sure. It's better than watching Russell Wilson. We'll see. I think it gives some added value to Darius Slayton. Maybe the Theo Johnson also, because we know Jameis has worked well with tight ends in the past. Sure. I'm excited. Why not? We know Jackson Dart, for me, is the franchise quarterback for the Giants at this stage. So, yeah, let's let Jameis light it up. I don't want to watch any more Russell Wilson. That won't work. Okay, last question. As head coaches and GMs start to get fired in season, how does that impact your ranking of Dynasty assets on those teams in the short term? It doesn't really. I mean, the firing of Brian Daboll didn't change anything for me on the Giants. I was tired of Brian Daboll. I'd already assumed he was being fired. The one thing is, if we see that an entire regime has been fired, then we start to look at some of the, not the really good players. Like, Jackson Dart is not going to be replaced, or, not going to abandon Malik Neighbors just because they didn't draft him. But like more ancillary players. Like, on the Titans, Tajay Spears, who's from a zillion regimes ago, there's going to be another new head coach. I mean, is he going to like Tajay Spears? I have no idea. So it does sometimes impact around the margins, but it's not a big factor. It's like a tiny factor. And I'm mostly focusing on what players do on the field. So it's a tiny factor. Very, very small. Okay. If you like the video, make sure to support the channel by subscribing. And don't forget to hit that new hype button to help the videos in the algorithm. Plus, hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Dynasty fantasy football content year-round and starts at content in season. 50% discount at all tiers using the code TylerYT50. Every sign-up helps support my independent content. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.